Hi, my name's Sam. I'm an alcoholic. I wanted to say thank you all for being here. Thank you all for making this meeting happen. This is a great meeting. This is a great group. It's always nice to be here. I got my big book open and I'm looking at one of my favorite pages uh, where it talks about in We Agnostics, deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it is there. And I love that one. For me, the pomp for me is ego. Worship of other things is when I make other people, my higher power, and calamity for me. I have an outside issue, and I'm not unique in this. It's what I do about it that counts. Is my outside issue is mental illness. So for me, I think that's like the calamity that can sometimes get in the way between me and my higher power. I think, and I get to use stuff I've learned in AA. I try to use it in all aspects of my life. I'm currently in another fellowship in addition to AA, and I'm going through the steps in that fellowship. But we're using the AA Big Book, and AA for me needs to come first. And my sponsor in that fellowship even told me that today while we were on the phone. He said, he doesn't recommend people, you know, go into that fellowship until they've got like 10 years of AA sobriety. And so I've got more than that. I've got 13 years as of yesterday, uh, made possible because of all of you and people just like you. And my sponsor told me I always have choices. It says our problems are of our own making. It doesn't always seem that way, but it's there's just too much me sometimes, and I give myself too much power sometimes. I make myself the higher power, and a friend of mine used to say that you can be drunk without the drink, and I've definitely found that to be true. And that same friend would often say, luck is for casinos. We are blessed. We're more than just lucky, we're blessed. And any day without any day, one day of sobriety is a miracle. And it's all about what are we doing right now. I was on the phone with someone, I mean, in another fellowship, but I was using stuff I learned in AA. I said, what are you doing right now? There's an old timer at my old home group who used to always say that. He would say, it's what you're doing right now. Are you drinking right now? No. Then AA is working pretty well, and it's what you're doing right now. And I was telling this young man, great guy, and I was telling him, what we can learn to be in the moment. Anyway, so my sober date is July 8th of 2012. I have a home group. My official home group is the Big Book Experience in Manhasset, New York. We meet Saturday mornings at 11. We're hybrid. Love to see you there if you're in town, or if you want to join us remotely. I don't drive, so I go to mostly virtual meetings. It's a little difficult to get around where I live without a car, but people do it. And anyway, yeah, my sober day is July 8th of 2012. And that's my chemical sobriety date. And uh, we all know that emotional sobriety is more than just chemical sobriety. Because I'm a real alcoholic, and I'm an alcoholic. And I have to I need to remind myself that I'm just a drunk. And that in order for me to have emotional sobriety, I need to have my chemical sobriety. That's the foundation. I believe that sobriety is built for us. For some people, there may be some people on earth who can be emotionally sober and drink in moderation. Who aren't alcoholics. God bless them if that's what works for them and they can do it safely. Who am I to say? But for me, I need to have my sobriety needs to be built on a foundation of I have this acronym I like to do: AA, absolute abstinence. I cannot use any drugs. I take medication as ordered by the doctor. Uh, I do not take liberties with that stuff. And I tell my care team, my therapist, and my doctor, I tell them that I'm in recovery, and so my recovery needs to have that foundation of abstinence, like it says in the big book. If I were to drink or use drugs, then I have no chance of being emotionally sober. I don't know how long I'd live with if I were to pick up. I don't know if I have another recovery in me, and fortunately, I don't need to do that. The way I view it is, those people who relapsed. I'm not trying to say this in a judgmental way, but they relapsed. Those of you who are here at this meeting, you never have to go back out. You never have to relapse again. If you relapsed, you know enough people have relapsed for you. They've done the research and the experimentation, and the results were negative. That it never gets. I've never heard anyone say it gets better out there. No, it only gets worse. And but things are very good today. My sponsor told me I always have choices. He's not my current sponsor, but I did have to switch sponsors. But he would, he went out, but before he went out, he would say, "You always have choices. If that coworker is going to be nasty, I have choices." And I mean, for coworkers, a lot of it goes back to principles before personalities. Try to stay in my lane, and try to change my perspective, and just try to stay in my lane, and just you know there are certain principles we're expected to uphold as spiritual principles, regardless of the clashing personalities. And as an employee where I work, and there are principles. I signed a contract. There are principles I'm supposed to uphold. My ego, I think my ego might get in the way at work. I think maybe I'm thinking that I'm some big shot, maybe because I come from a well-to-do family. Maybe that like gets to my head. But principles before personalities. I will say this. I wonder if this is like I have wondered in the past. I don't know if this is true, but I've wondered if maybe this is an example of my higher power having a sense of humor, which is the fact that like there have been many times where things that saved my butt have come from the mouths of people who I hated in AA. That guy or that girl who I can't stand just shared something that I needed to hear. And one thing that person shared was, when it comes to sobriety, you're either in or you're out. And he also gave a great piece of advice that I try to follow, which is, I don't want to overdo it with service. I want to leave. I want to have. I need to leave enough space to recover, which sometimes I kind of don't do. I have a tendency to kind of overdo it with service. But he said he always tries to have like one service commitment each quarter, or whatever measurement of increment of time they do. And that's what I'm trying to do. I believe very strongly in spirituality through service. I love going to the LICYPAA meetings. But anyway, more about. I don't think I have time to get through all the steps, but I'm looking in the big book, and I'm looking at resentments, and I was told that my part in the resentment is quite often, why am I holding on to this stuff? And I remember I was at a meeting a long time ago, and I had like 2 years sober, but I was living in extreme self-centeredness, and I was very immature, even though I was chemically sober like 2 years. I was not a vision for you. I was not living in the solution, and I was talking to an old timer, and I was being annoying. And the old timer said, "Everything that happened to you, Sam, you had a part in it. Doesn't mean it was my fault, but it's, why am I holding on to this stuff? I don't have to hold on to it anymore. Why, I read a book when I was a kid, and there was a part that said, why travel heavy when you can travel light? And I believe this is, this is an entirely spiritual program, and to me, the spirituality is an experience. That's what it all comes down to for me. I cannot get sober on someone else's experience. I need to have my own spiritual experience, just like it says in the big book. It says we decided we would go to any length for a spiritual experience, and it's one speaker who I like, although I think he's got a lot of ego, but so do I. he said like he said he said it's like a spiritual infusion, and I like that description. Like it's just something that just it's like a spiritual experience that just like changes you and changes your perspective. A dear friend of mine who passed a few years ago, he used to always say, it's all perspective. And when your perspective changes, your whole world changes. And I'm going to tell this story, and I tell it a lot, but I'm going to tell it again. I had like 2 years sober, and I was chemically sober, but I was living in extreme selfish self-centeredness. And I was not at all living in the solution. And I was walking down the street of a street in Manhattan, busy as Manhattan gets. Typical Manhattan day. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people walking past me, and I was on the phone with my sponsor, and I said, "Well, I don't know what to do. Do I do the steps with you because you're my sponsor, or what do I do?" And at that exact moment that I said that, a man walking past me hears me and says, "Yeah, do the steps with your sponsor." And I, either that was just a coincidence or there was some kind of higher power. But anyway, I said that I just like telling that story. But higher power to me is an experience that removes the drink obsession. And I need to, everyone, I believe, it's like I was told, uh, my higher power is different than your higher power, and that's okay because I can't get sober on someone else's experience. And I'm definitely still a work in progress with these steps. I doubt myself a lot, and I second guess myself. But things are good, and it's always nice to see you guys. And I'm gonna share with the perspective. I'm gonna share another line I really like in the big book, which is in how it works. I'm looking at it right now, and it says, "We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one." And I like that one, because that means like it's easy to take a kindly and tolerant view to people I like. That takes no effort. But like that means that like that person I resented on my fourth step, that like attacks me physically. That means that like, he, it's in the past. It wasn't my fault, but like, I don't have to. It doesn't have to weigh me down anymore. It was not my fault that it happened, but what am I going to do about it? Is this, sometimes people will have bad experiences in childhood that, if you're hysterical, it's historical. And, you know, I don't have to hold on to it. And I, I'm still kind of angry about it but when I talk about it, it's not so bad because I see things differently now. One of my favorite meetings on Long Island, the Roosevelt We Care group, there was a sign up front that said, "I see things differently now," and I think that's what it really is. Spirituality is a change in perspective. I was telling a friend about something I was concerned about, overthinking something, and he said, when it comes to things like character defects, you're going to need, intellectual analysis. Overthinking doesn't go deep enough. You need a spiritual change in perspective, and that's what I need. And that's what this higher power gives me. Nothing. It doesn't. I'm not promised anything external. I'm promised that, if I keep the right attitude, I can go anywhere. And I do not have a desire to drink anymore. The outside issue that I have that I'm in another fellowship for, I'll admit it, like I do get like desires to act out in that way, but my sponsor in that fellowship says like that's normal, because we're only human. But with AA, this needs to be first. And I get nervous because I I value the other fellowship, but like I want to keep this first, you know. And I think I'm gonna leave it at that. God bless you all, and I love you all. Thank you.